My name is Ava Marinelli. I am the Communications Manager here at the Linked Learning Alliance. I'm just going to get us started with a couple quick pieces of housekeeping. We are recording this session and it will be made available to folks after the event if you'd like to review it or share it with any of your colleagues who couldn't make it today. You'll automatically be muted upon entering the webinar today, and we ask that you please stay muted unless you are speaking so that we can all hear our fantastic presenters throughout the afternoon. There'll be multiple opportunities for you to engage during this session, either via the chat or during some Q&A sections. So if you're joining us by phone, you can use *6 to mute and unmute yourself. And you can engage, like I said, using the chat function by clicking the chat button at the bottom right hand of your screen. And folks from the Linked Learning Alliance will be monitoring the chat throughout today's event. You can feel free to message Maya or anybody else on the Linked Learning staff if you need any assistance. If you are having any trouble with your internet connection, we recommend that you try turning off your video. You can also dial in by phone if that helps as well. And then lastly, we just want to share some opportunities to engage with us on social media today. Please feel free to follow us on both Twitter and Instagram. And if you're sharing any of today's incredible content, please be sure to tag us and use the hashtag #LinkedLearning. But with that, I would love to pass it off to my colleague, Dan, to get us started.
Thank you, Ava. Welcome to today's webinar on attending to student supports and social emotional learning. We're focusing today on the role of counselors in providing integrated supports in linked learning pathways. Here are the specific objectives that we will accomplish this hour related to effectively supporting college and career readiness. We'll share support and staffing strategies and models for counselor integration in pathways and their role in facilitating meaningful partnerships. Juniors and seniors were surveyed last spring by the Linked Learning Alliance over 7 districts in California with the goal of understanding how the crisis has affected them, their education, and their future. So we just wanted to share a little bit of the results. 57% of juniors, 65% of seniors shared keeping a strong connection with their counselor was helpful. And 70% of juniors, 72% of seniors shared being part of a supportive community was helpful. And it just kind of underscores the importance of the topic that we're here to discuss and learn more about today. So the 3 strands of linked learning, integrated program of study, work-based learning, and integrated student supports work together in an integrated fashion, all focused on the student outcomes as defined in your context. So those can be pathway outcomes, school or district graduate profiles, for example. And the data supports the outcomes and drives program planning to achieve student outcome goals. Targeted student supports are integrated into all of the 3 strands of the linked learning standards and have an explicit role in the integrated program of study and work-based learning. And now I have the pleasure of introducing Jorge Ruiz de Velasco, the Deputy Director at the John Gardner Center for Youth and Their Communities at Stanford University. And I'm proud to say a good friend. Jorge has made important contributions to equity in public education and to linked learning in particular through the research he has led over many years, including a guide to integrated student supports, which was published last year. Jorge is joining us literally after just being honored as recipient of the 2020 Vision Award from RAPSA, the Reaching at Promise Students Association, for his vision in pursuing creative policies to attract and retain students who would otherwise be left out by traditional school programs. So welcome, Jorge. Good to see you.
Hey, Dan. You know, I was struck as you were, and thanks for that introduction. I'll try to live up to it. I was struck when you were showing the slides that, you know, independent of the functions of individuals in linked learning pathways, like counselors and the pathways themselves. Looking back historically, what an amazing change that linked learning approach and concept has made on the way that work and time is organized in high schools and sort of how high schools are structured. If any of you read pre-2000 reviews of the high school, like the Shopping Mall High School by Paul and Farrar, for example, what they describe is a high school with multiple pathways to different destinations for young people. There was a college-bound track and a vocational track, and then sometimes lots of tracks with no clear destination for kids. And what linked learning has done by integrating both the CTE components, vocational components, with a high standards academic component is created the expectation of universal college and career readiness for all, as well as the opportunity for all kids to engage in that kind of pathway. This has really powerful implications for counselors because this kind of organization really taps into the way that counselors are trained and the way that they the kind of mindset and skills that they bring to the high school in ways that are way more compatible today within linked learning pathways than they were in the way that we traditionally designed high schools in the 50s. In one of the most important counselors tell us is they're no longer sorters, people who decide who's going to be on what track and go where. They can more naturally engage the skills and that they've acquired in professionally as coaches, as mentors, as educators who help young people to successfully transition and bridge to high school and post-secondary success. And they're no longer bureaucratically boxed away from teaching and learning and from the teaching and learning enterprise. So, scheduling kids into classes, conducting discipline routines, recording performance data, scheduling common assessments. Now, because of the way that work and time is organized within pathways, in collaboration, with prizing collaboration among the adults, counselors are finding ways, and I think there'll be examples on the panel of how they can push into classroom to advance academic and social emotional learning. They can push out from the school to facilitate school community partnerships and to be an integrated part of an education opportunity access and success team. So I don't have to provide any examples because I think there's going to be lots of good examples from the other presenters, but I just want to tick off a couple of things that are new roles counselors can take on within linked learning pathways in a coherent design. Counselors say that they feel more invited and very much able to contribute to developing a coherent mission and vision for the pathway and for student success. They have been involved in conducting student needs assessments, organizing asset mapping across the school, and developing strategies for mapping, for example, A to G enrollment in some districts, and increasing post-secondary transition in others. Counselors say that they are better able to support social and emotional learning into project-based learning teams or in other teams that are part of the pathway, and engage with teachers in direct instruction and building key student success competencies that are within the skill orbit for counselors specifically: growth mindset, productive agency, conscientiousness, self-management. And third, they say counselors report that they're able to participate in direct individual or group instruction to support academic and technical learning, particularly focused on things that are within the counselor's orbit, direct instruction in learn-to-learn skills, note-taking, guided reading, group and project collaboration, learning about workflow management in projects, resume building, personal statement development. And they've supported pathway students through college and career knowledge skills. And very importantly, a lot of counselors report supporting workplace learning in new and effective ways that are squarely within their training and professional knowledge. Doing workshops to prepare students for successful workplace learning experiences, learning about the norms and routines of the work environment, workshops to prepare employers to understand pathway learning goals, and to incorporate those learning goals in workplace learning experiences. And of course, they've been able to rethink the traditional way that counselors have collected data at the school level to develop early warning systems to identify young people early on who are not being successful and that may need additional supports, and in conducting equity audits in some cases of either the systems in their schools, the routines, culture and climate of their school, or assisting classroom teachers with curricula equity audits to maximize access, opportunities, and success for all their kids. And I am really anxious to hear about some of the examples from the presenters that are going to follow.
Thanks, Jorge. Appreciate that. And just the way you talked about here in previous conversations we've had about that focus on, preparing kids in the counselor role for the outside facing sort of world and what they have to deal with, I think is really important. And I think we're going to see that theme kind of play out in our next presenters here. So, and Jorge, if you have, or if anybody has comments, questions for Jorge, as with all our presenters that you're going to be hearing from, please feel free to either put them in the chat as we go, and we will get to them if we can, but certainly at the end where we built in time for Q&A, or save them up and you can at the end put them in the chat, or just kind of say them when we get to that part of the program. So thanks again, Jorge. So now I would like to introduce Joy Soares, Director, College and Career at the Tulare County Office of Education and leader of the Tulare Kings College and Career Collaborative, and James Carrillo, College and Career Counselor for the Dinuba Unified School District. And I have to say that, so they are part of a multi-district college and career support network in the Central Valley. And they'll give us a perspective on cross-jurisdiction systemic approach to link learning student supports. And they, Joy and the group there, they've been involved in link learning for a long time. I hear about the impact that they've had all the time. In fact, I was on a call this morning with some folks in Antelope Valley, and they made reference to some materials that they got from TK at some point in the past that they were using. And so we really appreciate the time that they've taken to be here today. So Joy and James.
Thank you. And I want to just say, Jorge, I so appreciated your pre-2000 shopping mall analogy. And, it really speaks to how the linked learning approach has and continues to shift and inform improvement of college and career practices. So thank you very much. And good afternoon. Thank you, Dan. It's always valuable to learn with linked learning leaders and teams. And thank you for the opportunity to do so today. And so as the director of the Tulare Kings College and Career Collaborative, the Tulare County Office of Education is the facilitator and convener of this robust regional collaborative that's illustrated on the slide before you. The Tulare Kings College and Career Collaborative, we're comprised of K-12, post-secondary, and workforce partners who think and act regionally, really based on three core beliefs. The first one is success for all, that all students must be ready to succeed when they transition to post-secondary education, career training, and the workforce. Our second core belief is that linked learning and high quality pathways are key K-12 and post-secondary strategies to to further develop and fill the talent pipeline. And our third core belief is that TK partners are better together, and we thrive by committing to regional strategies and a shared vision. And so today I just want to briefly mention, the next slide illustrates one of our better together strategies that significantly supports our regional partners through a robust counselor network. It was formed in 2018 because of the need for local counselor collaboration and resource sharing. And we have over 114 K-12 post-secondary and K-12 and post-secondary counselors involved. And it's been really a significant support. You can see that the TKCCC Counselor Network is designed really around these three outcomes: collaboration, resource sharing, and that counseling with intention piece. And this truly is a system of support for our counselors. We started with a counseling conference about 4 years ago, and immediately this was really a grassroots effort. So it's been exciting. You'll see on this next slide that these are just a couple of the topics from our 2020 Counselor Network convenings. And I think it's really important just to mention how incredibly important our counselor network was when COVID hit. It was just amazing to see how our counselors mobilized and came together more frequently, in smaller groups perhaps, and really looking for, support, answers and ideas. So it's just really been a true system of support. Dinuba High School is one of our TK K-12 district members. We have 12 K-12 members, and you can see here that their college and career readiness structure, it's been a very targeted, equitable improvement cycle. It's been in this improvement approach for really intensely for the last 6 years. And it's resulted in 79% of their students being identified as college and career prepared. It's quite a feat. It was very targeted. And I want to say, and I want to go back to what Dan said, and I know Rob Curtis is on the phone, and there have been so many people and so many colleagues across the state and the country that really helped us learn and understand really what a high quality college and career approach was, and Link Learning has certainly been that. And Dinuba has been very involved. So here to share more about Dinuba High School's student support is Counselor James Carrillo, one of my colleagues. James?
Thank you, Joy. It really is an honor to be here today to share about our Link Learning Academy and the supports that we have in place for our students. I've had the privilege of working with our academy for the past 4 years. I started as a work-based learning coordinator while I was working on my master's, and now have been able to transition into the role of the academy counselor. The Construction Management Academy at Dinuba High School is currently a Link Learning Silver Academy, and we're working on our gold certification. Some of the things that I'd like to highlight about this academy is that our students have the opportunity to earn 11 early college units throughout their 4 years in the program. The other fun fact about our academy is that their culminating project is actually a 2-year project where our students actually build a house on campus. And when it's completed, we auction it off to the public, and then the house is then moved to a new location. Due to COVID, as you all know, things look very different, and we've had to transition a little bit and make sure that everything that we are doing has some kind of intentionality behind it. From the team that we have to support our students, it's a total of 15 members consisting of our vice principals, counselor grade level teams. We also have interns, and then we have a couple of support counselors district level that are reaching out to our students. We have intentional, MTSS, Our tier one is our personalized counseling meetings, and that's for all students. And during those meetings, usually a Zoom, we review grades, attendance, A through G, graduation requirements, making sure that their technology is working. We're a very rural community, and so we want to make sure that our students have the tools that they need to be successful. We want to make sure that they're utilizing all of our online supports that are available to them. We also talk about upcoming planning for their courses, their four-year plans. Um, but one of the things that I always start off with in my meeting is I always ask the students to um, type a couple of descriptive words in the chat box while I'm pulling up their information in PowerSchool. This allows me to kind of gauge to see how the student's feeling, how they've been doing with distance learning. It hasn't been easy for a lot of them, but it does kind of set the stage for where we are headed in that meeting. This little graphic here in the slide there is something that TKCCC has created for the college career framework. And this is one of the documents that I review with the students and kind of make sure that they understand what path they're going down and how they're going to finish high school and be a completer and be prepared. Our intentional tier two support is targeted support that we focus on our kids who have multiple Fs. These lists are updated every 3 weeks, and we're doing constant check-ins to see how we can support the students and get them in going to the online resources that we have available that I'll talk about in just a second. Our tier three is a very smaller group, but we do have to refer some of those students over once in a while. Those students are sent over to our Learning Guidance and Student Support Center. Those students get to work with our educational social workers for a little bit more in-depth counseling to work on their emotional and academic as well. Some of the targeted supports that we have available for our students right now during distance learning is teacher office hours every morning. We have after school tutorial. We are making home visits to make sure that our students have the internet and the tools that they need. We're doing constant phone calls to check in and see how students are doing. One of the things when I'm going through our personalized counseling meetings with our students, and we get to the point of what's your plans for after high school, or what are you thinking about? Sometimes I get the I don't know. This is perfectly okay. We know our students don't know yet, or they're going to change over time. So one of the things that I do with them is career exploration activities through CCGI, California Colleges. And then we set up another meeting and kind of review those results and see if we can find a path for them to take some additional electives and get them into something that they're interested in. Counselors are doing video focus lessons right now. Normally we'd be in class doing focus lessons with the students about grade level specific information. But because we're not on campus, we're having to be creative and using technology. We've even made TikTok videos to kind of keep the kids engaged. The other programs that we're implementing right now is in-school youth internship programs with our partner CSET. This has actually been a game changer for some of our students who are struggling. They have been involved with the program, but there are specific requirements grade-wise that they have to meet. And this has been the carrot for some of them to get those grades up. We also do monthly job ready skills and college workshops to kind of help get the kids some basic knowledge and be better prepared for their next steps. So the social emotional learning and support that we're doing, construction management has truly created a small learning community that fosters social emotional support. Right now, we're currently seeing a lot higher engagement and better attendance rates during COVID. Because we've created kind of a family feel. We're bringing guest speakers in constantly to help mentor our students and get them kind of exposed to different career opportunities that are available to them. We're constantly monitoring grades and attendance to make sure that we help students stay on track. Some of the intentional opportunities that we've provided thus far is our meet and greet. Normally, in a normal school year, this was an evening event where all grade levels would show up. They would get to hear from the teachers about the program. They'd hear from other students about the program, upperclassmen. But because of COVID, we weren't able to do that. So we decided to take this opportunity to get to meet those students and parents kind of on a one-to-one setting. Um, and we focused really on our tier 2 students, so our multiple Fs who had been struggling. We brought them to campus, sat down, we practiced all the safety guidance that's been provided by the state. We made sure that we got them an agenda, we got them their project learning kit, but ultimately we just wanted to make sure that we did a wellness check on them and see how we can better help them. We're currently working on a mentor breakfast where again, we bring our industry partners in to meet with our students, have some conversations about career opportunities, the path that they took to get where they are today. We've also done drive-through events, so that way students can come pick up their learning kits. And mainly this one was kind of a quick check-in, but nonetheless, we got to bring them to campus so that way they can see their teachers, kind of do a quick check-in and make sure that all their students are doing well. Office hours are also another opportunity for our students to meet with the teacher one-on-one, and the teachers are able to kind of gain a sense of if something's going on with those students, then they refer them out to me. So today, what I really wanted to talk to you about was kind of my role within the Academy and what we've been doing for our gold certification. One of the key pieces that I've been helping with is the data collection and monitoring, the evidence collection to make sure that we're meeting all of our pathway standards. The other piece is our Academy students really do get double the efforts. They've got 2 counselors, a grade level counselor and myself, the Academy counselor. They have 2 work-based learning coordinators to support them through WBL, connecting them to industry and college through internships, job training, and virtual experiences. We've started utilizing NEPRIS, an online tours and guest speaker tool to adapt to our virtual online learning world. I also take care of a weekly monitoring through eligibility report. This eligibility report is sent out to our teachers at the beginning of the week, and then we also discuss it at our weekly meetings. We reach out to students to see what's going on with them and how we can better support them, and really just start those conversations. So that's pretty much my role with the Academy, and I really want to thank you so much for allowing me to share with you today. I hope you were able to gain at least a piece of information that would be beneficial to you and supporting your Link Learning students.
Thank you, James, and thank you, Joy. That was a lot of information, great information. So please, for everybody, if you have questions, want more information, please don't hesitate to kind of reach out or put the questions in the chat. So love to and follow up with you. And so now we are going to hear from Renee Shipman, who is the Vice Principal of the School of Leadership and Public Service at Wilson High School in Long Beach. And she's going to give us her leadership perspective on a district initiative for student supports. Renee, welcome.
All right, thank you so much. And hello, everyone. It's lovely to see so many familiar faces, both in Long Beach and across the system. So I'm happy to be here with you today. So in our time together, I'm going to talk about the role of the Link Learning Pathway Triad team and really how the counselor's role within that triad is focusing on student support, and share a few resources to help teams that are ready to adopt this practice or think about how this practice could look in their own system, so that you can have a takeaway to work on or think about. So in my background, you see my beautiful campus here without children. And this is part of what Wilson looks like. Wilson is a large comprehensive high school. We have about 4,000 students. And until 4 years ago, we were that traditional campus that Jorge described. And so it was the last school in Long Beach Unified to adopt Link Learning practices. And the work that I have led at the site is really transforming this large comprehensive into 5 Link Learning pathways. So we are in our 4th year of implementation in a wall-to-wall setting all of our students are now in linked learning pathways, and that transformation is largely about the team of incredible staff that I work with and their willingness to support students in this new frame of thinking. And so in our district, we have something called the Understandings Continuum, and they are really 6 ways of being, or 6 practices that we frame our thinking around. And I'm sharing one of them with you. It is called collective teacher efficacy, and this is, we call it U5. And I share this practice with you because it really centers our work as a pathway team at our site, because all of the members of the team are invested. We're all contributing with our different lens, our different approach to put students at the center of our work and really help support high quality pathway instruction. So think about that frame of collective efficacy as we talk through the slides. So when you think about a leadership team or a pathway leadership team, usually you start with the lead teacher. In our practice in Long Beach Unified, the lead teacher is really the foundation of the pathway. They are the ones tasked with doing a lot of the heavy lifting of the pathway, including driving that certification that we reference from time to time. And the pathway lead is a tremendous role, and is a role that any teacher leader on campus, when done effectively, is a full-time job. In addition, they are also teaching their full-time coursework. And so what we learned at Wilson in our practice was that it could not just be the lead teacher's responsibility to drive the work of the pathway. There needed to be other roles at the table doing the work. And so what that looks like is an administrator who is really leveraging their role as instructional leaders and providing feedback to teachers, and really guiding the work of the instructional practices that are happening at the site. And then there's also the role of the counselor, who is leading the work of student support, but is leading it in partnership with the other 2 roles at the table, who is engaging in social emotional learning, who is supporting master scheduling and making sure students are cohorted, who is working on engagement with students, but also engagement with community. And so when we see all of these roles working together to support the pathway work, you are beginning to see the elements of a high quality leadership team that can lead a linked learning pathway effectively. So we talk about certification a lot. I think you probably all talk about certification a lot too. And so what we are looking at is, we're looking at the gold certification standards here, or criteria here. And I've called out student support specifically because I think this is where the work of the counselor is. So when you look at the integrated student support criteria, you see the work of the counselor called out in these standards. And so as we have thought about how can counselors really engage in linked learning practices, we see it time and time again in the standards. So if you see college and career preparation support, the counselor's work, this is what a counselor would be doing in a pathway, but they would also be doing this work outside of a pathway if they were not in a pathway school. What some of our counselors had a hard time understanding is, well, pathways are separate, but the reality is the counselor's work is really embedded in the heart of the pathway, and it is the heart of the pathway that you see here: student support, making connections, building relationships, developing skills, making sure they're on track for A to G. If we go to the next standard, you see those self-management skills being developed and supported by the pathway and by the pathway counselors. When we look at, we have 5 pathways at Wilson. Oh, can you go back? Thank you. When we have 5 pathways at Wilson, and 3 of the 5 are focusing on one of these aspects of social emotional learning. So one group is focusing on mindset. One group is focusing on self-management. Another one is focusing on community building and relationships. each of these teams has really identified something that is central to the needs of the pathway, and the counselors are the ones who are really leading that work and providing support and data around it. Okay, next slide. So the next one is your individual student support. So we kind of heard a little bit about this in Tulare Kings, and we do a lot of the same kinds of targeted interventions, RTI-like models, or MTSS is the newer version of this. And so we also engage in those practices here. Each of our pathways have a tiered response to intervention and are working to support our students holistically as well as individually with that in-time support. And then our last one is that continuous learning cycle for us. So really this is where our student voice is so important. And oftentimes it is our counselors who are bringing in that student voice, because the relationships that students and counselors have is such a different relationship than administrator or teacher. And so when you have that bond and that connection between the counselor and student, they're able to bring in that student voice in a different way and continue in that cycle of continual learning. So when you put these standards together in the context of collective efficacy and shared responsibility, what emerges is this idea of the pathway triad. And so this is something that we have really embraced at Wilson and embraced as a systems practice, is the triad. And so the triad is really a shared responsibility between all three of those roles. This group meets together, they plan together, they analyze data together, and they really set the direction of the pathway through the different lenses that they bring to the table, the different voices that they have at the table, but they're all equal voices. There's not one that is louder or stronger than the other. It's a collaborative effort through all three parties. And so what does this look like in real life, right? I know that the idea is great, but what does it look like in practice? So when we look at it in practice at Wilson, we look at it through the lens of a meeting structure and how we're really supporting the work of the pathway. So we have set up a meeting structure that starts with the whole group, and that is led through our pathway coordinator. Then you have the pathway triad meetings, which those three different roles come together and really look at data, talk about what the next steps are, how are we supporting students, what is the next voice that needs to come to the table. And through those meetings, you have your pathway meetings. At Wilson, we have 2 meetings a month. One is a student support meeting where we focus on student intervention, student need. And the other one is a learning and teaching meeting where we focus on instruction, industry integration, work-based learning. And so we make sure that we are bringing the pieces to the table when it is the appropriate time. And then the final piece are our grade level team meetings. And I would say that grade level team meetings are exactly that, which it's hard to do when you are working remotely. And so we've come up with, our counselors actually come up with a strategy for our grade level teams to collaboratively engage with each other since we're no longer face-to-face and in person. So going back to that triad piece, this is really where, again, the heart of the work is, and it's how the team collaborates together. I've shared with, or it'll be in the resources, our planning template. And this template really starts with what are our goals for the year and our action plans. And then each meeting is calendared out in a large view so that we can think what direction are we going as a team, and what do we need to do along the way to get there. This template will be available for you in the resources, but this has really helped us as a virtual team working remotely so that we have some common ideas about what's happening and where we need to go. And so the last piece here is, what are some different ways that our counselors have shifted to a virtual support for students? One of our district initiatives this year is to really identify ways to support students who are underrepresented, and specifically African American students. And so one of the things that we have done at Wilson is we've created African American focus groups so that we can really hear student voice and understand what the challenges are, so that we can provide different supports, because the supports we've provided in the past are not meeting their needs. And that has been led through our counseling team. Another thing that we are doing is students who have disappeared, who are not being responsive, who are not engaging in work, our counseling team is actually doing home visits to reach out to those students to find out what exactly is the barrier. Is it a technological barrier? Is it a motivation barrier? Is it all of the above? Is it social emotional? So we are working on providing resources for students as we go out into the homes and making sure that they have the materials they need to be successful academically. You also see our intervention letter here, which is the first document. That is a document that we have sent out in the past to students, and we will be sending it out again this year. It is something that comes out after the quarter grades are released, and it's targeted to students who are not finding success in their academic coursework. They're either earning a D or an F, with some strategies that they can engage in and some tools or times or access to teachers who are going to be able to support them to help get them back on track. We talked a little bit about the tiered intervention system, but the last piece here is that student intervention or student support document. So down at the bottom, you see an example of a 10th grade student concern form. So rather than asking teachers to collaborate in another Zoom meeting to talk about students, we've gone to a virtual Google Sheet where teachers can enter information about students, which is also shared with our counseling team so that they can reach out and support those students who are really having a difficult time or having challenges accessing content or other areas. And so this has replaced our grade level team meetings right now, because grade level team meetings are not going to happen in this space given all of the other virtual things that are going on. So this is the way that we have modified this practice into a more accessible strategy. So what I will leave you with is, how are you, or how could you create collective efficacy within your triad, and what kinds of supports would you need to build that practice? And so I will turn it back over to Dan.
Thank you, Renee. That was wonderful. I really appreciate that. And I want to remind everybody, we are running a little long, which is fine, because we're got some just terrific information, and we really appreciate the wisdom and knowledge that's being shared. But if you have questions, please put them in the chat, and if we have a few minutes at the end, we will get to them. And if not, we will certainly follow up with you. So I'd really encourage you to do that. And next, we're going to hear from STEM Academy Hollywood in Los Angeles. And we have Esther Dabagyan, the principal, and Susannah Hall, the lead teacher. And they are going to talk to us about their school and pathway specific initiatives. So Esther and Susannah.
Thanks, Dan, and good morning. No, just kidding. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Time. Yeah. So we just have one slide. We're going to try to keep it short. I'll briefly introduce the school. STEM Academy of Hollywood is one of 3 schools located on the Bernstein Complex campus. We are a gold certified linked learning school in the process of getting recertified this year. And we're also a pilot school within LA Unified, which is a reform effort from within the district, really born out of Boston, actually, that is rooted in democratically distributed leadership. So at the heart of our school is really this idea that it is not top down. And I think that plays really well and has become essential to how we support our students. And the most challenging aspect to moving into a virtual setting has been maintaining that culture of open, frequent, and structured communication that we already had in place with across the staff. So with our teachers, our counselors, our office staff, our aides. So we had a lot of existing structures in place, and the challenge is to translate those to a virtual setting. So we'll talk a lot about that. And I'm going to hand it off to Susannah. We'll break this up into tier 1, 2, and 3 of student supports, and we'll start with 1.
So most of our tier 1 supports are spread across the entire staff. It's not just the lead teacher, it's not just the counselor, it's not just the principal, but a lot of staff, and actually students are involved in these. So the first one was mastery grading. We decided as a staff to move to mastery grading 4 or 5 years ago now. And what this means is we discuss as a staff, it's actually really helped our transition to virtual learning, because instead of focusing just on, get in the late work, or somebody missed a class and so they have to go make stuff up, we can instead focus our last 3 weeks after the Thanksgiving break on making sure that our students demonstrate mastery instead of trying to figure out a way to give the student enough points to get them there. We also developed our own school unique advisory curriculum 4 years ago, starting 4 years ago, and have an entire pilot committee devoted to that. So we have 6 teachers on our advisory curriculum committee who are in charge of meeting during PD when we have pilot committee time and coming up with advisory curriculum. There are links to the presentation, which you guys will have access to after the presentation. So you can look at these and go in more depth, and of course, email either Esther or me with questions. We have a mentoring club that we just started this year, the Bears and Cubs Club. This was partially out of a teacher-driven initiative, but we also have some students who were really pushing for ways to help not indoctrinate, because I wouldn't call us a cult as a school exactly, but definitely bring the freshmen into our school culture. So we have a group of about 40 seniors mentoring. Our goal is to eventually get to all of the freshmen, but right now we've got about 80 freshmen that we're mentoring. We've also got ACEs trainings and programs. We have all of our freshmen participate in a summer bridge program every summer, and we actually got it to work virtually this year, which we were really impressed with. The ACEs training is usually part of that. It ended up being part of our freshman orientation for that, but it is a chance for us to help students and staff understand the adverse childhood experiences and how can they affect our students, and make it clear to everyone going in that these aren't something that you have to necessarily deal with on your own. So we build in that socio-emotional support early. The partnership wraparound services are things like we have the Hollywood Family Source Center partnership with LAUSD, as well as our internships, and those are available to all of our students. We have some partnerships with Kaiser and a couple of others that Esther is going to talk about in more depth. And then we also have tutoring and office hours available for, it's part of our elect to work agreement, which is something that we have as a pilot school, that all teachers provide 3 hours of tutoring every week. We do that when we're in the non-virtual setting. When we're in the virtual setting, we realized that teachers were going to spend a lot more time responding to messages. And so we were having at least 1 hour a week of Zoom office hours, but then 2 hours of additional time for our staff every week to respond to messages, so that we're really keeping up communication with students. And this really enables us to catch a lot of our students before they fall through the cracks and make sure that they're seen, make sure that they're heard. When we get to our level 2 students, this is a little bit more reactive, less proactive, and this is where it starts to narrow the group who are focusing on things. So we, as a staff, have counselor conversations. All of our teachers submit 2 names of students that they're concerned about, whether it's for attendance issues, behavior issues, other things, onto a list. They describe the strategies that they've attempted and the strategies that have been successful, that haven't been successful in helping those students. And then we dedicate time in PD for the counselor and all the teachers to get together. You know, we all, like all teachers, gossip about their students. This is turning it into a structure that actually ends up leading to an action plan for that student, so that we come out of that meeting being like, okay, we really need to get a home visit for this student because, you know, his mom says that he's there, but he's not getting on the phone and he hasn't showed up for class for 6 weeks. So we really need to catch that. And actually, I mean, that's more of a tier 3, but we definitely do the catching in counselor conversations. And now I'm going to hand it back to Esther, because this is where it transitions into more structured, not top down, but out of the classroom stuff.
Thanks, Susannah. And I realized I neglected to give everyone a sense of how many students we have. So we have about 600 students. So when Susannah mentions, you know, that she's doing something with, you know, 100 kids, that's like the majority of a grade level. So our 9th graders are about 160, and then 10th is at about 150, and then you keep going down. Our senior class is about 135 kids. So in terms of counselor conversations, that is where we catch individual students, but our counseling team meets every week, and we've transitioned during the virtual setting to continuing that practice, as well as the doing counselor conversations in PD virtually. And what helps with the weekly counselor meetings is that it doesn't just include our academic counselors, it includes our PSA counselor, our A through G, our Gear Up partners, so our college advisors. It includes our Gear Up partners that are working with our 9th and 10th graders. I have my bridge coordinator with us. And that is when we do things like a grade analysis. We have case consultations where we talk about specific students, but we also look at data as it pertains to subgroups, and where we develop plans for how to address those subgroups. That might be going to a particular department or a particular resource. For example, the EL population was struggling a lot more with distance learning. And we discussed this a lot during the counselor meetings. And we approached our EL coordinator, and we approached the ILT, our instructional leadership team, and incorporated some additional PD regarding how to differentiate in a virtual setting for students who are struggling with the English language, which aren't just our EL kids. So it was paying off. It's been paying off a lot. We're doing targeted and virtual small group tutoring, where we're asking teachers to identify students that are falling into a specific subgroup and are failing, and they're arranging tutoring with those students in addition to the regular office hours that they have. And the counseling team is helping by calling home. We're doing so many more phone calls home and home visits now, actually, in the virtual setting that we were before, because communication is key here. So we can arrange these tutoring hours, these virtual tutoring hours, but if the students don't show up to the Zoom, then it's not really effective. So we're doing a lot of phone calls to make sure that the parents are aware that there is tutoring happening to help the student catch up. We are also doing one-on-one in-person tutoring. I'm going to move to the targeted student support. These are for our most at-risk students. And it has been challenging. There's a lot of obviously hoops to jump through in terms of making sure both student and tutor are COVID tested. It is voluntary in terms of the tutor. The home visits are very, our PSA counselor does not go into the home. It's sort of a visit at the door. But these have been really instrumental in number one thing, maintaining connection with families and students. So it's really difficult to support students in the virtual setting if they're losing connection with you. And it's really easy to lose connection when all you're doing is zooming into a call every day, where you can just put your picture up and tune out. So as many touch points as we can get safely, that's the number one priority. And that's what we talk about during our weekly counselor team meetings. And that is the message I constantly take back. And we have staff in their teams, whether it's their student support teams or department teams or pathway teams, and they still meet in all of those teams to discuss the students they have in common and brainstorm how they're going to help support our kids. I'm sure there's some things that I skipped. I'm really grateful for the community partnerships we have with GRID, Gateways, Hollywood Family Source Center. My number one job as principal has been, like I said, to continue that communication while we are distance learning. So every chance I get to include them in a meeting, to include them in a phone call, that's what I'm doing. And I'm asking them to help, and they're more than willing to. Whether it's, helping a student have representation at a parole hearing or making sure they have services for mental health. All of those it's really about asking and making sure the culture of open, frequent, and structured communication is in place.
Thank you. Thank you, Esther and Susannah. I really appreciate that. Just want to point out the comment that Joy put in the chat about appreciating how the linked learning field work presented connects in so many ways, which exemplifies the laser focus on high quality systems of support. And that surely came out today. So unfortunately, we aren't going to have a lot of time for questions and comments. But again, if you did have one and we want to respect that, please put it in or ask, and we will follow up with you. And one thing I thought about is, going back just to the beginning and what Jorge was talking about, what counselors should or should not be doing and what they're really trained to do, but then sometimes what they end up doing. And I wonder, knowing how important it is that the educators in Pathways, that there's continuity there and that they feel like that they're able to do their jobs and feel successful. And I couldn't help but wonder if you guys have any anecdotal thoughts on, the effect this has on counselors, do they feel more successful and more kind of rewarded and more satisfaction working in these environments? So if you have any kind of last thoughts on that, I'd love to hear your observations. As well as, while you're doing that, anybody out there who's listening, I know there's a lot of counselors, putting in the chat kind of what you feel about that in terms of your working environment and what you've heard here today. So for any of the presenters, do you have any thoughts on that, or I don't know?
Hi, I'm Mrs. Hammerschmidt from Lakewood. I was just, what I took away, we just started doing the triad work, and before we did it, I thought, I don't know if I want to do this, no, but I do feel more invested, and I feel more like what I do matters, or that we as counselors have a say, and that our professionalism in the field is important and valued. So I guess that was my biggest takeaway so far. Thank you,
Ms. Hammerschmidt. I appreciate that. And I know I'm in trouble for going late because it's 3:30 and we want to respect the end times for folks. So just want to quickly say that if you're looking for more opportunities to connect and learn with peers, we are putting together a linked learning counselor network. So there'll be more information coming on that. And when you complete the feedback survey for this webinar, you'll have the chance to indicate your interest in learning more about the counselor network. So please do that. And so if you could, here's on your screen, you'll see a link to the the feedback form, so the survey. So if you could do that, we'd appreciate it. And I want to thank Jorge, Joy, James, Renee, Esther, and Susannah for sharing with us today. Really appreciate it. Sorry we didn't have even more time for conversation. And coming up next, we'll have a webinar on December 9th on leveraging your Pathway Advisory Board to engage industry partners and keep students connected to purpose. Also coming up in December will be lessons from Oakland Health Pathways. And in January, a new certification platform supporting pathway design and development through silver and gold certification. And we'll have a lot of opportunities around that as well. So thank you so much for joining us. We'll leave it open for a little bit longer if you want to have some conversation or ask some questions and finish up your survey, welcome to. But thank you so much for joining us today.